The San Antonio Spurs need to commit to an identity moving forward. For the first time in my lifetime, they have missed the playoffs, and they are really finally not a team that everybody can just assume is going to be a contender. Even in the last few years where they've been 7th seed, 6th seed, 8th seed kind of material, people still don't want to face them in a playoff series because it's Pop, it's the Spurs. It's something that you just don't want to see. But now, with them finally not making the playoffs, I think people are starting to look at them a little bit differently. And I think the Spurs organizations need to take a look at themselves and really assess how they're going to operate moving forward. Because I think there is the chance that if they don't commit to an identity and commit to whatever their next plan is, and just try and keep kind of cobbling together the same kind of team and seeing if you can make it work just because Pop is that great and just because you're the Spurs so it works out, I think they could end up having a pretty ugly few years. Now, I think they have two directions they can go. They can either embrace their youth talent or try and squeeze out a few more win now years. So, looking at their youth talent first, they have drafted very well, but in kind of a strange manner. They have really drafted a lot of talented guards. They have, I would say, 5 or 6 quality young guards who you could realistically say, we want to embrace developing that player and we want to move forward with him. So I think the main one that I look at and that a lot of people look at is DeJounte Murray. At 24 years old, out of Washington, he is defensively already one of the better guards in the league. He's 6'4", 180 with a 6'10 wingspan, and he is just a dog on ball. I love watching him play on that side of the court, and every year that he's been in the league, you can see his offense steadily improving. In the shortened season last year, he averaged 11 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists, which are really well-rounded numbers. But when you look at his body type and those long arms, just length, athleticism, all of that, I think he has huge scoring potential if you put the ball in his hands and say, we want to move forward with you. And of course, he's already achieving some of his defensive potential, which will make him potentially one of the best two-way players in the league in the next coming years. They also have Derek White, who is a bit older at 26. He has played for the Spurs as kind of a pseudo shooting guard, kind of in a CJ McCollum mold, where he does have quite a bit of ball handling responsibility, but he's not necessarily your true point guard or the person that you really put the ball in his hands in important moments, bring the ball down the court, leading the offense, that kind of thing. He has been a pretty streaky scorer, at times looking very, very good, and at times looking very quiet on that side of the ball. I think defensively, he's pretty average. I like the effort that he puts in, and he uses good defensive fundamentals, but I don't think there's anything special there. With Derek White, I mean, he is 6'4", 6'8 wingspan, not incredible, but he plays a little bit bigger than he is on defense, using his body to push people outside of the lane on drives, that sort of thing. At 26 years old, I think probably around the range of 11, 12 points per game, 3 rebounds, 4 assists is probably where he'll stay. I don't see him having a huge ceiling, but that is still a great bit of production, especially from a guy who seems to be pretty even-keeled and a good locker room presence. Now, the other young guard that I'm super excited about is Lonnie Walker, who kind of exploded onto the scene a little bit during the bubble as he got some more playing time. And if you want to talk about an NBA athlete, Lonnie Walker is that guy. 6'5", 6'10 wingspan, 205 pounds, jump out of the gym. I remember, I think it might have been his first game really playing, where he just caught a body on the fast break. Like, he is explosive athletically, and he's very unpolished on both ends of the floor, but I think if you want to look at a coaching staff who can develop unpolished athletes into phenomenal NBA players, the Spurs is where you want to be. Lonnie Walker definitely gives shades of Kawhi, where he has this incredible body and an unpolished skill set, but I think Lonnie Walker could turn into a very, very good player. They also have Keldon Johnson, who didn't get a ton of run in his rookie year for the Spurs. He was a late first-round selection, as most Spurs draft picks have been in the last few years. Out of Kentucky and Oak Hill, he was a really highly regarded recruit and had an up-and-down year in college. And so it made sense that he was more of a project than an immediate fix player for the Spurs. But again, in the bubble, they gave him some run, especially when it looked like they wouldn't be able to make that play-in game. And he looked good. He only averaged, I think, around 5 points. But I mean, the guy is clearly talented, and he's another young guard who you can rely on moving forward, potentially as a building block. Now, in this past draft, they picked a wing who could play shooting guard, but most likely will be looked at as a small forward in Devin Vassell, a 6'7", 195-pound Florida State wing. Good 3-and-D guy, seemingly. He's 20 years old, and he just looks very solid fundamentally. He is kind of seems to be in the, I want to say, Robert Covington mold of just a guy that will be a super valuable asset to anybody. He'll play lockdown defense, hit his threes, come up here and there with some good dribble drives, and just be super solid member of the starting lineup. Almost actually more akin to a Trevor Ariza, maybe. I like that pick. It's maybe something that you can look to play him alongside DeJounte Murray and Lonnie Walker, or DeJounte Murray and Derek White. Like he could probably play that three pretty solidly. But he also fits in with that kind of more backcourt wing group that they have. They also, in the second round, picked up Trey Jones out of Duke, which is a very, very Spurs pickup. He's kind of a floor manager, floor general, not amazing skill set, but high effort defender, good passer. He actually, in his second year at Duke, took over a lot of scoring responsibility, which was a little bit surprising. He ended up averaging 16 points, 4 rebounds, and 6 assists per game, which I wouldn't have thought he had in him, but he showed that he was a true leader and all that, and I like that pickup. Again, it's another guard, though, and I don't know how they're going to fit him in with everybody else that they have there. Now, they did get rid of Bryn Forbes, who was another person kind of taking up some room and some minutes in that backcourt. I've never been a huge fan of Bryn Forbes. He's a good shooter, but he can't really play point guard. He doesn't have the playmaking for that. And a 6'2", 205-pound shooting guard just isn't necessarily something that'll get you success, especially one that doesn't seem super able to consistently take people off the dribble and create his own shot. He did average, like both Derek White and DeJounte Murray, 11 points, as well as 2 rebounds and 2 assists per game. And of course, you always miss shooting when you lose it, but I don't think that's too huge. But when you look at all of those guys, that is a lot of solid young players at really the 1 and 2 position. A few guys can slide over to the 3, and so that's fine. The issue is that those guys and their growth is going to be stunted by the fact that DeMar DeRozan re-upped on his contract. And really the fact that the Spurs haven't shown a commitment to really going in the youth direction and focusing on those guys. LaMarcus Aldridge is still on the roster. I thought that he maybe would have been traded or moved in this offseason just because, yes, he's still a 2010 guy. He'll get you those consistently. His three-point shooting has vastly improved as his motion has kind of declined with age, but he's getting older. Defensively, he's looking more and more like a liability every season. And I just don't think he's quite a winning player right now, but he's good enough to the point where you still have to get him the ball, you still have to include him in your offense, all of that. DeMar will take minutes from almost all of those young guys that I just talked about, because as good of a scorer and ISO motion guy as he is, he doesn't do much without the ball in his hands. He's not somebody who you can have spot up and give possessions to other people. He needs to be the one creating for him to be useful. And I guess the big issue with that is I think what a guy like DeJounte Murray or Lonnie Walker needs is to have the ball in their hands and to get used to running an offense through them. And so I don't know, that it worries me that I know it was a player option, but that they didn't seem to push super hard to move him. And I think that this just comes back to what I'm saying about them needing to commit. Either commit to this young talent or move some of it and go for another win now year. You have Coach Pop at the helm still, and I don't think anybody will question whether Popovich can lead a team to a deep playoff run, even if they're not quite as talented as other teams. And if you want to get a few more years out of that and maybe send Pop off with some good teams, I say go ahead. I don't think that's ridiculous, and getting rid of some of your young talent to bring in older, more established people to make a playoff run, that's not a terrible move. But they didn't do either. I mean, I think if you took a guy like Derek White and said, well, he maybe doesn't fit our timeline as well with the rest of our young guys, and he has shown that he can show up in big playoff games. I think it was game 1 against the Nuggets where he, I think, had that poster dunk on Paul Millsap, which was fantastic. But like, you could maybe send him to Detroit for a Derrick Rose kind of player, or see if you can bring in a Blake Griffin kind of guy. Like, you could do some real shopping and put together a real playoff team around DeMar DeRozan, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Coach Pop, and you could maybe go for a 5 seed and second round, maybe even conference finals. I don't think that's out of the question, but instead of going that direction, or going in the direction of, okay, let's really focus on all of these young guards and figure out who's good, who's maybe not, who we're going to be building around for the future, they're kind of choosing the worst of both worlds, with retaining players who will A, not help them get good draft picks, and B, stunt the growth of their young players, while also not committing to those guys that are stunting the growth by not getting them veteran support that could really set them up for a title push. And I don't know. I don't think you have many years of Pop left. Not that he's going to be fired. I mean, he could do anything and the Spurs would still love him. But he's getting older, and I don't think it's out of the question that he'll retire in the next few years. And I would just hate to see his last few years be conducting mediocre teams that seem relatively directionless.